All right, so Jay-Z has filed a defamation lawsuit against the woman who accused him and Puff of allegedly raping her when she was only 13 years old. So we know this case has since been dismissed, and now Jay-Z is filing a lawsuit against her. So let's get into it. This is obviously a huge development in this case. And so I want to welcome you back to this channel if you've watched some of my videos before, but if you don't know me, my name is Jamahl Kersey and I'm a criminal defense attorney. I've been practicing law for over 15 years, and on this channel, we're breaking down legal concepts so you're in the know. All right, so before I move forward, I definitely want to thank Shouty. Thank you so much for the generous gift. I really appreciate it. All right, so this came as a surprise to me. Listen, I've been on the low working, grinding. I've got a couple major cases that I'm working on, and I wanted to offer my reaction to the Jane Doe plaintiff dismissing the case. So if you don't know by now, that lawsuit, so the lawsuit that named Jay and Puff was dismissed, right? So they voluntarily dismissed the case. And the reason why that was surprising to me is because I thought that, again, I mean, obviously, you know, sign your name to a complaint, you're suing these people, suing, you know, major public figures. If you go as far as to file the lawsuit, then, you know, presumably you plan on carrying out the case to its end, right? To end up getting what you were going after, right? To get the money. But this case was voluntarily dismissed, and, you know, one of the things that I had mentioned was that the judge was not going to dismiss the case, right? Because the law favors resolution of cases on their actual merits versus based on technicality. So it wasn't going to be, you know, no matter how aggressively Alex Spiro and his legal team attacked the plaintiff, attacked Buzbee and all these things, that wasn't going to result in the judge dismissing the case. But obviously, if the plaintiff themselves voluntarily dismiss the case, then that's the way that the case can be made to go away. And that's what happened. It was dismissed with prejudice, means that it can never be filed again. But now, just a couple weeks later, we have this lawsuit from Jay-Z claiming defamation. And so we've heard about defamation recently in rap news. So we have this case, but then, you know, Drake had filed his defamation lawsuit, right? You know, against UMG and iHeartRadio and, you know, all those entities and everything. But Jay-Z, he filed his lawsuit in Alabama. He's named the former Jane Doe plaintiff. He's named the lawyers that were involved and Buzbee Law Firm. And so again, this suit filed in Alabama because, remember, Jane Doe was actually from, or is from, Alabama. And so when we're talking about a defamation lawsuit, at its core, you're saying that somebody made a statement about you, whether written or spoken. They've made a statement about you that harms your reputation, right? And, you know, it goes without saying that if somebody accuses you of having raped a little girl, then that's obviously going to harm your reputation. And so, you know, he's saying that, you know, this has cost me, or this has caused me, you know, mental and emotional anguish just dealing with this, right? You know, you're waking up every day seeing your name being dragged through the mud on YouTube, in the news, right? On blogs, just everything, you know, so many headlines being made about this story. That's got to be a lot to deal with, right? You know, and it's easy to just say, oh, well, you know, you're rich, you can deal with it. Like, nah, that's tough, right? I can only imagine the conversations that are happening in the house, the conversations you have to have with your wife, the conversations you have to have with your kid in order to, you know, keep them, you know, help them keep it together with all just the turmoil that they had to have been going through. But then there's also actual business losses. So he said his company, Rock Nation, has lost out on $20 million in deals. And even that, you know, makes sense, right? There's going to be companies that say, hey, you know, I can't touch you right now. You are toxic right now. You have some extremely serious allegations attached to your name, these would be criminal, right? If this is something that had happened recently, obviously with the passage of time, it made it harder for law enforcement to get involved in and prosecute the case. But, rape, especially rape of a child, that's a crime that somebody could do many years in prison over, right? So you can see how there would definitely be business losses associated with something like this. But the interesting thing when you're talking about defamation is there's a distinction between if the person is a public figure or not, right? If it's just a private citizen, then the defendant only has to have been negligent in what they said about you. But when you're talking about a public figure like Jay-Z, you have to prove what's called actual malice. So what that means is you have to show that they knew. So the statement that they made, that they knew it was false, or they acted in reckless disregard of the truth. And that's exactly what Jay-Z is saying in this situation, because he's basically saying that, Jane Doe was lying, right? She made up this whole story, right? So she knew, right? She knew that she was lying about this story. She knew this didn't happen. She knew she had never been in the same room as Jay-Z and Puff. So she knew this was a lie. And basically this lawsuit is saying that Buzbee and his team knew it was a lie, or if they didn't know it was a lie, they acted in reckless disregard of the truth. And so one of the interesting things about this, because it's one thing that once the case gets dismissed, it'd be one thing for Jay-Z, and I know Jay-Z and Alex Spiro actually issued statements addressing the dismissal of the lawsuit. It'd have been one thing to just leave it at that. But the filing of this lawsuit just drives home the point further that this is, that this was a case based on lies, because the truth is an absolute defense to defamation, right? So, when you are filing a defamation lawsuit, it's because the thing that the person said about you is a lie, right? So that's the issue. If somebody's telling the truth, the truth can be harmful, right? So the truth can harm your reputation, but if somebody's telling the truth, then you can't sue them for defamation. So it has to be a lie. Right. So for them to go as far as to file a defamation lawsuit just lets you know that this is something that absolutely did not happen. Right. And so it's really interesting because, once Alex Spiro had come out and he gives a PowerPoint presentation and he's, pointing out all these glaring inconsistencies and calling out Buzbee for, attaching his name to a lawsuit without doing the proper vetting, we had Tony Buzbee come out and say, hey, I stand behind, what my client's saying. She's telling the truth. And she said she's willing to take a polygraph test, right? But interestingly enough, we never got the results of that polygraph test. So I'm personally curious as to whether one was actually taken. So did she actually take a polygraph test? And if she did, is it possible that it showed that she wasn't being honest, right? So that's an interesting thing that we, may or may not ever know the answer to. But one of the other interesting things is when you file a lawsuit, generally speaking, you're seeking damages. You're seeking money, right? You're seeking compensation to make you whole for your losses. And, obviously in this situation, Tony Buzbee and his law firm, they're going to be the deep pockets in the situation, right? Because generally speaking, you're not going to file a civil lawsuit against somebody who has no money, right? Unless you're just trying to send a message. Because normally when you file lawsuits, and, Jay-Z is far from the normal person, right? He is not a normally situated person. I mean, he has his own legal team that he has, on speed dial. But for somebody suing somebody else, a lot of times it's going to be on a contingency. And so the lawyer isn't going to take the case unless there's actually the prospect of, being able to take a percentage of what the case settles for or what the jury comes back with the verdict on. But as it relates to Jane Doe, she's probably not going to have a whole lot of assets. Definitely not, the 20 million in losses that Jay-Z is seeking. Now, Tony Buzbee, he's going to have that, right? He's had some big lawsuits over the years. I saw something about a $10 billion lawsuit that he had. So, this is a man who is going to have the assets to, sustain a settlement in the neighborhood of what Jay-Z is probably going to be looking for, in this case, or if it has to go to trial, being able to get a verdict and being able to recover. But I do think, just based on the tone of the statements that Jay-Z and Spiral have made and just, seeing how this whole thing went down, it's sending a message, right? It is sending a message, and this is something that you really don't see. How many times do we see people get, wrongly accused of something, a false accusation of something like a, domestic violence or a sexual assault or a rape, and then the case ends up getting dismissed, but there is no redress, right? The person accused doesn't end up going after the false accuser, but in this situation he did, and I think that does open the door. It creates a pathway for people standing up for themselves, because it really is disheartening to see just how easy it is to raise a false accusation of somebody, and whether it's a civil case or a criminal case, just how much it can completely destroy a person's life. And then, once the case gets dismissed, it's like, whew, all right, cool. I've made my way through the storm. But what about my reputation, right? I lost my job. My family turned on me. My friends had turned on me. People, or at a minimum, they were doubting me. They're looking at me different. Like, what am I supposed to do about this? And so I'm curious to see, how this case ends up playing out, and how it encourages people in the future to fight back when, they're falsely accused of things. And we know from the civil filings from the former lawsuit where, Jane Doe was suing Jay and Puff, we know that the defense's position was that Tony Buzbee and his team failed to adequately vet the story, right? So they should have done more in terms of interviewing her and grilling her, before signing their name to this lawsuit and filing it. And so apparently Jay-Z's legal team and their investigators have actually made contact with the former Jane Doe plaintiff, and she's admitted that she made the story up that Jay-Z did not assault her. And it even goes further that Tony Buzbee was the one who encouraged her to go on TV in order to get the maximum possible settlement, right? And you saw like that the effects of that interview were significant, right? They had millions of people going after Jay-Z, going after Puff, saying this absolutely happened, this is true, and they should have to pay, and they should have to go to jail. So the interview definitely had its effect, but at the same time, the interview had an adverse effect because it gave the defense an opportunity to see all of the holes in her story. And as we've said in the past, when somebody's lying about a situation, they're going to double, triple, quadruple down on the main thing, but on the fringes, they're going to be lies, because it's just really difficult to account for everything. There's going to be something, there's going to be either blatant lies, or there's going to be inconsistencies that you're ultimately able to exploit in order to call into question whether they're telling the truth or not. But Tony Buzbee isn't just taking these allegations. He's pushing back. He's saying that Jay-Z's case has no legal merit, right? He's saying that Jay-Z's investigators have been harassing this woman and trying to intimidate her. He says that she is still standing by her claims, which is interesting because she's decided to voluntarily dismiss this lawsuit. So it sounds like there is going to be some exposure in terms of what ended up happening, whether that's on Buzbee's side of things, if they encouraged her to lie in order to get the maximum amount of dollars, or, Buzbee might flip the script and say, during discovery and try and figure out if Jay-Z's team has been, unreasonably intimidating towards this Jane Doe plaintiff. Are they going to try and say that they forced her to settle? We just don't know, right? Or they forced her to dismiss the case. We don't know, but this thing is going to be ongoing and continuing. But like I said, for them to file a defamation case, knowing that the truth is an absolute defense, I just think that's a very bold and powerful stance to take, because it just, drives home the point that this didn't happen, but we'll see how this thing shakes out. Obviously, this is a brand new case. It was just filed today. There's all kinds of stuff that needs to develop, but what are your thoughts so far? I mean, are you riding with Jay-Z on this? He's filed a defamation lawsuit, or do you think he should just let it go? Or do you think there was something to Jane Doe's lawsuit against him? Let me know your thoughts below. Well, that's it for this one. If you got something out of this video, show me some love, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.